looks like, hey, let's get right to it right now. Your insider, Ken Rosenthal, on with us. It finally happened, Ken. Your reaction, Shohei, going to the front runner all along in many minds, and also the money had you, didn't it?
It's only a surprise, Scott, in the sense that there was so much talk about the Blue Jays in recent days, real or imagined. And yes, the money is the biggest surprise in all of this. And I remember the day after it was announced he would need elbow surgery, I wrote a column saying he's still getting at least 500 million. And fans and readers reacted as if I had said something outrageous. Well, those fans were right to rip me because I was $200 million off. And the fact of the matter is, this is the richest deal in Major League history. And Scott, you made a good point there. The deferrals are key, and we don't know the breakdown yet and how the deferrals will work. It sounds like they're massive deferrals because they want to help the Dodgers with the CBT and with cash flow. That was the narrative that has been put out there, that this was Ohtani's idea. He wants to help the team be as competitive as possible while he is there. What the deferrals will do is lower the present day value of the deal. My guess it's going to be around 500 million, maybe even less when the deferrals are factored in. But Scott, you're right as well. It's $700 billion. It's the richest deal in sports history. It's a big thing for Major League Baseball. And I'm about to post a column questioning whether it's good for the game or bad for the game. And people are going to howl as they always howl with these contracts, especially when they are done by large clubs, but in my opinion, this is good for the game. He is going to the nation's second largest media market. He's going to get massive exposure. Not that it couldn't have happened in Toronto, but it would not have happened in the same way. So we've got Soto in New York, we've got Ohtani in LA, and for all the people watching and listening who are fans of small market teams, I will only say to you, money does not guarantee success in this sport. It never has and never will. Last year, the Orioles, 29th largest payroll in the game, win the big, bad AL East. Diamondbacks, 21st payroll in the game, opening day payrolls I'm citing here. They go on to the World Series, beating the Dodgers and Phillies along the way. Nothing is guaranteed here except, of course, the money going to Ohtani. This is still a highly competitive sport. It's tougher for the small markets. There's no question about that. There's no sense hiding from it. But I'm not going to sit here and say the sport is crumbling. If anything, I would suggest the sport is on the verge of a renaissance.
Now, there's so much that I need to unpack, but the first thing you said was, we don't know where the Blue Jays were all those last 3 days, so much. Is there a process for you to sift through everything that was false and real? And are we going to be able to sift through how real the Blue Jays were in the coming days and weeks and months? Or is it just going to be conjecture and they'll say, we offered this and showed him that kind of thing?
Well, Sportsnet in Canada has already reported the Jays offered more than $500 million. So I take that as a solid report. Sportsnet is a very credible outlet. They, in fact, are owned by Rogers, the owners of the Blue Jays. So when you ask about the process the last few days and sifting through it, it's difficult, obviously, to try to find out what's going on. I had a credible source yesterday tell me it was Toronto, and I checked it and was told, no, we do not have a decision. So obviously there were some bad reports out there. There's no question about that. And I know fans get really upset, and rightly so. We're supposed to be accurate. We're supposed to be right. I've been there myself. And it's the worst feeling in the world. And when you're up in this environment, this Twitter real-time environment, unfortunately, mistakes are going to happen. Everyone makes mistakes in their jobs. Granted, these were big mistakes. I'm not excusing them. But ultimately, we get to the real story, which is Dodgers $700 million, and all of the shenanigans of yesterday will quickly be forgotten.
And the number is so large that it does stand out as not even just a sports story for fans in sports that don't even care about baseball. It is a global news story.
That's right.
Money like this is spread, right? And that positive PR for the game, whether the league likes that now Juan Soto's contract might be a little nicer for him if he has an MVP type season with the Yankees, and that leads to another bidding war, whatever. The attention on the sport right now based on this situation alone, right, on a Saturday in early December is wild. So
I agree.
I agree with that. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that this does transcend the sport. Baseball is to some degree a niche sport. There's no question about that. It's not the national pastime the way it once was. And things like this elevate the sport. Now, I know it's frustrating again for fans in certain markets, but this is a big deal. And it's a thing that makes people stand up and pay attention. And going forward, it's going to have the same effect. We're going to want to watch the Dodgers now. We always wanted to watch them anyway, but they become even more compelling. No World Series titles in a full season since 1988. They just brought this guy in to get them there. They've got Freeman, they've got Betts. When will Ohtani pitch again? How will he pitch again? Will he be even better as a hitter in this lineup than he was with the Angels and as he gets deeper into his prime years? These are all things that we'll be really paying attention to. And yes, Scott, you hit it on the head. Casual fans as well are going to follow this guy because he's such a unique figure in the sports history, a unique figure in the history of sports, period. No one in our sport has ever done what he has. And for that reason, he transcends everything.
And I'll also point out that being around the game, as all of us are, us three here, we see how the Dodgers operation runs. If you do power rankings, which at one point you did talk about what some of the best organizations look like in terms of how they run on every front, right? Not just wins on the field, but from a business component, marketing, everything. He does join a team that will know how to promote him correctly, which is important, again, for our sport when we care about our sport. So now everyone wants to know, oh, speaking of our sport, if you look at, I keep saying the top 50-ish free agents, or like the Athletic has top 40, I think there's still only like 5 to 7 that have actually come off the board. And everyone just keeps wondering, now that this has happened, and the Blue Jays have to do something and have expressed that they have money to spend, maybe not Ohtani type money, Giants, Yankees, Mets, Yamamoto coming up. Do you see, I know you can't completely predict anything on this front, but do you see this week suddenly being a flurry now that we got that massive name and money out of the mix?
No question. The winter meetings are effectively about to begin. And the action that we might have seen last week and didn't, it's coming. It's coming because it's inevitable. There are trade discussions that have been going on for months now. There are free agent discussions going on since the end of the season. And the entire sport, it seems, has been on hold in a way that in my 35 plus years, whatever it is now, I have never seen. I've never seen the offseason come to a standstill like it has in recent days because everyone is waiting for this particular chip to fall. It has widespread ramifications for designated hitters, for relief pitchers, for starting pitchers. The whole thing is going to open up now. The dam will break. And yes, we're going to see a flurry of activity. Look at the Dodgers, just alone. They need to add starting pitching. Ohtani's not pitching next year. So I expect them to trade for a starter in the next few days. I expect things to really start to percolate.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so on that front, with LA, how do you think this changes their offseason now, Ken? Because like you mentioned, and we've talked about it already today for a couple hours, their pitching fell apart by the end of last season. They have young names. Do you think they'll be active in the trade market? Because you don't bring in Shohei Ohtani right now and just say, coming Shohei. And we know the Dodgers already have a good team, but they do have significant holes to fill. And maybe if it's not Yamamoto, do you see the Dodgers being super aggressive now that they have the entire world staring at them?
Yes, of course. And they didn't enter into this agreement with Ohtani with the idea that somehow they were just going to have him and nobody else. When you do something along these lines, something of this magnitude, you obviously have other plans to make your team as good as possible. And again, with the deferrals in this contract, the idea is to give the team a measure of payroll flexibility that will enable them to be what they want to be. Yes, they need starting pitching. There's no question about that. I'm sure they will get it.
Okay, last one from me, Ken. Who do you think are the losers in all of this? I mean, if the Blue Jays were seriously in play, I thought Juan Soto would have been a nice name for them to look to as a consolation prize for a team that's clearly in win now mode and needs offense. There's not a lot of offense on the table, that a lot. And then also on the other side, we felt this. I know you did too. There was no way that he was going to go back to the Angels and play there for the rest of his career and be in a position where he doesn't know if he's ever going to sniff the playoffs. So who do you think kind of loses on this side of what just happened?
The Blue Jays for sure. They certainly tried hard. They gave it a good effort. And for reasons that we've written about at The Athletic, they had a lot of motivation here because of the $300 million renovation of their ballpark, the premium seats that they're adding. They want to make sure they fill that place and justify the expense. So yes, they're a loser. The Giants, again, they struck out on a star. Now, obviously, I don't know the efforts to win to. None of us do just yet. And they have a long offseason to go. There's plenty more that can be done, but this was someone that we all linked to the Giants for quite some time and thought that they would be a major player. I imagine they were to an extent. They met with Ohtani, but at the same time, they're still looking for that guy, that one person. Maybe it's Yamamoto, who is going to kind of give them that marquee name that they've been missing. They also need, of course, to just improve the quality of the team. That's the most important thing. But this is a team that needs some juice, and I expect them to be aggressive. Maybe they do Jung-Hoo Lee and Matt Chapman. Maybe they do Bellinger, Yamamoto. There are a number of ways they can go. But for now, yes, they are a team that missed out on this. The Cubs, I don't know how seriously they were in it. I don't know if they really ever expected to land Ohtani. But the other losers we should mention are those in the NL West because it becomes that much more difficult. The Rockies are the Rockies. The Diamondbacks are getting better, and they were pretty darn good last year. They're only should be on the rise. The Giants we just discussed a little bit, and the Padres are reducing payroll. So this obviously is a blow to those teams, but we've seen the Dodgers win the regular season before, and we've also seen them fail in the postseason, and that is going to be really compelling now to see a guy who is not in the postseason try to elevate their chances in October.
Narrative has been that Shohei wants to win. You saw it in the WBC the few times, even dating back to 2021. He talked about how great it was to be with the team. He wants to win, but he likes his teammates and all that stuff. So the narrative, he speaks a little bit about nothing, and he says he wants to win. Does this contract show he wants to win or that he went for the money?
No, both. He did go for the money, obviously. He's getting $700 million. But again, the idea that was put out about him having the idea for the deferrals and being willing to accept the deferrals to help with cash flow, to help with the luxury tax, that only shows even more that he wants to win because he's joining a team that has won and I'm sure will win again. And he's also taking steps, Eric, to help them in the future. And again, we don't know the details yet. I'm kind of anxious to see what those details are because they will tell us a lot. But indeed, this is all true. And that what the sources are telling us is true, that the deferrals were his idea and that they will be massive, significant, and the majority of his salary. That's a big step. And that does show, in addition to joining this team, that he wants to win. He basically got all of it. He got the money. He got the competitive advantage by joining the Dodgers, and he's helping them enhance that advantage, seemingly, at least of what we've been told, by agreeing to the terms that he did.
And just based on the finalists we saw last time around, it does seem like the West Coast is the spot for him too. So I guess Toronto was in play, but you kind of felt like he wanted to stay in California. And we'll get to Mariners fans at some point this week too. But Ken, appreciate the time for jumping in, and we'll talk to you later this week. Looking forward to all the details spilling out.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Ken Rosenthal jumping on with us.